They thought he was just an old man. They bulldozed his land, built 120 shiny new homes, and celebrated like kings. But what the HOA didn't know, he held the real deed in his hands. And when he sprung his legal trap, their empire crumbled overnight. Malcolm Turner had always known that his grandfather's land was worth more than gold. Nestled just outside of Willow Creek, the 200-acre property had been in the Turner family for generations. It wasn't just farmland. It was a piece of history, a legacy that spoke of resilience, struggle, and triumph. But for years, Malcolm watched as developers, real estate agents, and even the local HOA eyed his land with hungry ambition. They whispered promises of shopping centers, gated communities, and high-end housing developments. Malcolm, however, stood firm. He never intended to sell. One evening, as Malcolm sat on his porch sipping sweet tea, he noticed surveyor trucks rolling past the edge of his property. At first he thought it was a mistake, but the very next week bulldozers arrived. To his shock, construction crews began tearing into the land, flattening fields and carving roads without so much as a knock on his door. The Willow Creek Homeowners Association had made a bold move. They assumed Malcolm was just another old man too stubborn or too poor to fight back. Believing his paperwork was outdated, they moved ahead with plans to build a massive development of 120 homes right in the center of his property. Neighbors were stunned. Some whispered that Malcolm would never recover from the loss. Others shook their heads, pitying him as they watched house after house rise from the soil his grandfather once plowed. But Malcolm Turner wasn't a man to be underestimated. Sitting quietly with a folder of documents older than most of the HOA board members themselves, he smiled to himself. Every nail hammered into those houses was part of a trap they had walked right into. The question was, how long would it take before they realized it? While the HOA board members celebrated their successful project, Malcolm Turner quietly prepared his case. For months, he kept to himself, never once confronting the bulldozers or construction workers. He watched silently as the foundations were poured and the walls went up. The HOA believed his silence was surrender. They couldn't have been more wrong. Malcolm's late grandfather, Henry Turner, had been a meticulous man. He kept every deed, every tax receipt, and every legal paper concerning the land in perfect order. Hidden inside a fireproof chest in Malcolm's study were original documents that proved not only ownership, but also legal protections that stretched back nearly a century. Malcolm pulled them out one by one, a deed signed and sealed in 1932, tax receipts proving payments for every year without fail, a special court ruling from 1978 that recognized the land as Turner Estate and protected it from forced sale. Most important of all, Malcolm had recently renewed the title under his name and registered it with the county clerk. That meant every square inch of the 200 acres, including the space now covered with 120 shiny new homes, legally belonged to him. The HOA hadn't done their homework. They assumed Malcolm was too old-fashioned to keep his documents up to date. They believed no one would believe his word against theirs. What they didn't know was that Malcolm had already hired a sharp young attorney named Lisa Grant, who specialized in property law. "Malcolm," she said after reviewing the papers, "they've built an entire neighborhood on land that isn't theirs. You hold all the cards here." Malcolm leaned back, his lips curling into a slow smile. "Good. Let's not show them our hand just yet. The higher they build, the harder they'll fall." The HOA was buzzing with excitement. At their monthly board meeting, the members of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association toasted with glasses of champagne. To them, this was their greatest achievement yet, a brand new neighborhood with 120 houses, all ready to be sold at premium prices. Karen Whitfield, the HOA president, stood at the head of the table. She was known for her arrogance and sharp tongue, and tonight her pride was on full display. "We've done it," she declared. "This development will put Willow Creek on the map. By next year, our HOA funds will triple." The board clapped, oblivious to the storm brewing just beyond their polished conference room. They spoke of parks, swimming pools, and even a clubhouse, all funded by the profits from the homes. "Funny thing, though," one board member remarked. "Old man Turner hasn't made a fuss. I expected him to chain himself to a tractor or call the police." Karen laughed. "Please, that man doesn't even know how to use email. He probably doesn't understand what's happening. We're doing him a favor by bringing civilization to his fields." Her words drew chuckles around the room. To them, Malcolm Turner was invisible, an old relic of a past they didn't respect. Meanwhile, Malcolm sat quietly at his dining table with his attorney, Lisa. They reviewed the timeline, the construction start date, the sales contracts already signed, and the HOA's public announcement. Each detail was a nail in the coffin of their legal defense. "They think you're powerless," Lisa said, tapping the deed on the table. "But you're the one holding the detonator." Malcolm looked out the window at the distant glow of the newly built homes. Families were moving in, children were playing in yards, and the HOA was busy celebrating their triumph. He whispered to himself, "Let them keep celebrating. The trap is already set." The houses went up faster than anyone expected. Within weeks, the once empty fields of the Turner estate were buzzing with moving trucks, families unloading furniture, and children racing bicycles down freshly paved streets. The HOA proudly welcomed the first wave of homeowners, presenting them with glossy brochures about the exclusive Willow Creek expansion. To the buyers, everything looked perfect. The homes were modern, the streets clean, and the promise of a tightly managed neighborhood brought peace of mind. But behind the polished image, a storm was brewing that none of them could see. Malcolm Turner would drive past occasionally, his old pickup truck blending into the background. Neighbors waved politely, not knowing he was the rightful owner of every square inch beneath their shiny new driveways. He didn't wave back. Instead, he watched, making mental notes. Inside his home, Lisa was busy drafting legal notices. "Once we file, it won't just be the HOA in trouble," she explained. "Every single one of those homeowners technically bought a house on land that doesn't belong to them." Malcolm frowned. "I don't want to hurt the families. They don't know what the HOA did. My fight isn't with them. It's with the board that stole my land." Lisa nodded. "Then we'll craft this carefully. The law is on your side, Malcolm. We'll make sure the HOA pays the price, not the innocent families." Meanwhile, at the HOA headquarters, Karen Whitfield was busy holding press conferences, smiling for cameras, and bragging about the success of Willow Creek's newest jewel. Her arrogance only grew, blinding her to the fact that the land beneath those homes was slipping from her grasp. Malcolm folded the last deed back into its envelope and set it on the table. "They wanted to bury me," he murmured. "Instead, they've built their empire on top of my land, and now it's all mine again." A crisp autumn morning arrived, and with it, the first sign that the HOA's empire was about to crumble. Lisa slid a thick envelope across Malcolm's table. "It's time," she said. Inside were official legal notices addressed directly to the Willow Creek Homeowners Association. Each page carried the weight of ironclad evidence, proof of Malcolm's ownership, the illegal construction, and the HOA's blatant disregard for property law. "You're certain this will work?" Malcolm asked, though his steady eyes betrayed no fear. Lisa smirked. "Malcolm, they built 120 homes on land they don't own. The moment this hits their office, they'll realize the hole they dug for themselves. And you'll be standing at the edge, holding the rope." Later that afternoon, a courier walked into the HOA headquarters, handed the envelope to Karen Whitfield, and left without a word. Karen opened it, expecting another routine complaint from a homeowner. Instead, her smug expression shifted to shock as she read the opening line. "This is a formal notice of ownership regarding the Turner estate." Her hands trembled as she flipped through the attached documents. Deeds, tax records, and court rulings, all signed and sealed. Her face drained of color. "Impossible," she muttered. "This can't be real. We bought the land through the county registry, but when she called their attorney, he went silent after reviewing the papers." Finally, he said, "Karen, if these documents are valid, and they look valid, you're in serious trouble. The entire development could be deemed illegal." That night, the HOA board gathered in panic. Their celebration champagne was replaced by bitter arguments and frantic whispers. They had mocked Malcolm Turner, treated him like a relic of the past, but now they realized he wasn't just watching, he had been waiting. And the trap they had stepped into was about to snap shut. The HOA boardroom, once filled with laughter and champagne toasts, now echoed with raised voices and slamming fists. Papers were scattered across the polished oak table, copies of Malcolm Turner's deeds, legal notices, and highlighted sections of county property law. Karen Whitfield paced furiously. "This is a bluff," she snapped. "That old man is trying to scare us. There's no way he still owns the land. We paid good money for it." One of the board members, David Lang, cleared his throat nervously. "Karen, the county records show the sale, yes, but Malcolm's updated title supersedes it. His paperwork is airtight. If this goes to court, we don't stand a chance." "Then we settle quietly," another member suggested. "Offer him money, buy him out properly before this explodes." Karen glared at him. "Do you have any idea how much that would cost? We've already sold half the homes. If word gets out, buyers will sue us into bankruptcy. No, we bury this. No one outside this room needs to know." But silence wasn't an option. Homeowners were already asking questions about strange letters arriving in their mailboxes, summons to attend a community meeting Malcolm had requested. Unlike the HOA's glossy newsletters, these letters were blunt and direct. "You may have purchased your home in good faith, but it was built on land that belongs to me. I am not here to take your homes. I am here to hold the HOA accountable." The board erupted into panic again. If the family sided with Malcolm, the HOA would be finished. For the first time, Karen's confidence cracked. She sank into her chair, staring at the stack of deeds in front of her. Malcolm Turner wasn't bluffing. He had them exactly where he wanted them, trapped. And tomorrow night's community meeting would decide everything. The Willow Creek clubhouse had never been so full. Every seat was taken, and families stood in the back with arms crossed, waiting for answers. Tension buzzed through the air like a storm about to break. At the front, Karen Whitfield and the HOA board tried to maintain their usual confidence, but their smiles were strained, their eyes shifting nervously toward the man who had just walked in, Malcolm Turner. He wore a crisp navy suit, his posture straight and dignified. Beside him stood Lisa Grant, carrying a leather briefcase stuffed with documents. The room fell silent as the two made their way to the front. Karen forced a smile. "Mr. Turner, I wasn't aware you planned to speak tonight." Malcolm set his hat on the table, his voice steady but commanding. "You weren't aware of a lot of things, Mrs. Whitfield. That's why we're here." He opened a folder and held up the original deed. "This land, every acre of it, has belonged to my family since 1932. The HOA knew this but built 120 homes anyway, hoping I'd stay quiet. What they didn't know is that I've kept every record, every receipt, and every ruling that proves this property is still mine." Gasps filled the room. Homeowners exchanged wide-eyed looks, whispers spreading like wildfire. Lisa stepped forward. "Ladies and gentlemen, you bought your homes in good faith. You are not at risk of losing them. But the HOA built this neighborhood illegally. They are the ones responsible, and they will pay for it." A homeowner stood up, anger burning in his eyes. "So we've been paying dues to a corrupt board that doesn't even own the land?" The room erupted, shouts and accusations flying at the stunned HOA board. For once, Karen Whitfield had no words. Malcolm adjusted his jacket and looked out over the crowd. "This isn't just about me. This is about justice. And I promise you, justice is coming." The fallout from the community meeting was immediate. By the next morning, whispers of corruption spread across Willow Creek like wildfire. Neighbors who had once praised the HOA now questioned every decision, every fee, every promise that had been made. Karen Whitfield tried to control the narrative. She sent out an emergency newsletter filled with carefully chosen words. "Mr. Turner is attempting to disrupt our community with baseless claims. The HOA assures all residents that your homes are secure and legally protected." But her reassurances rang hollow. The homeowners had seen the papers with their own eyes, deeds older than the HOA itself, documents stamped with official seals. They couldn't ignore the fear gnawing at them. If Malcolm was right, the HOA wasn't just incompetent, it was fraudulent. Inside the boardroom, the cracks widened. David Lang slammed his fist on the table. "We can't lie our way out of this, Karen. The evidence is real. If the homeowners turn on us, we're finished." Another member, Susan Myers, spoke in a trembling voice. "Maybe we should negotiate. Offer Malcolm a settlement before this goes public." Karen's face hardened. "No. Settling would admit guilt. We fight this." But her iron grip was slipping. Several board members exchanged uneasy glances, already doubting her leadership. Meanwhile, Malcolm and Lisa were one step ahead. Lisa filed the first official lawsuit that afternoon, demanding damages for illegal construction and trespassing. The lawsuit wasn't just against the HOA. It named Karen Whitfield personally, along with every board member who signed off on the project. When word reached the community, anger turned into outrage. Homeowners showed up at the HOA office demanding refunds of their dues, shouting in hallways, threatening to vote out the entire board. Karen sat alone in her office that night, staring at her reflection in the darkened window. For the first time, she realized Malcolm Turner hadn't just set a trap, he was pulling it tighter every day. 2 weeks later, the inevitable happened. The HOA board members received thick white envelopes stamped with the county court's seal. Inside each was a summons ordering them to appear before a judge to answer Malcolm Turner's lawsuit. Karen Whitfield's hands shook as she read through the charges. Trespassing and illegal land use, fraudulent property development, breach of fiduciary duty, personal liability for damages. "This is insane," she muttered, tossing the papers onto her desk. "He can't possibly win this." But her voice lacked its usual sharpness. David Lang entered her office, holding his own summons. "Karen, this is over. He's got us dead to rights. You told us the land was clear. You swore the county approved everything." Karen's eyes narrowed. The county records showed no problem. How was I supposed to know his family had special protections on the property? "Because it was your job to know," David shouted. "You dragged us into this mess, and now every one of us is liable." Meanwhile, Malcolm prepared quietly for the upcoming trial. Lisa spread documents across his dining room table, deeds, maps, tax receipts, and court rulings dating back decades. "You've got an airtight case," she assured him. "Once this hits the courtroom, the HOA won't just lose, they'll collapse." Malcolm nodded, his face calm but resolute. "I don't just want to win, Lisa. I want accountability. They thought they could erase my family's legacy with bulldozers and contracts. Now I'll show them that paper, real paper, still has power." News of the lawsuit hit local headlines. HOA built on wrong man's land, court battle looms. Homeowners were furious, some threatening to stop paying dues altogether. The once proud HOA was unraveling before everyone's eyes. Karen sat in her car late that night, gripping the steering wheel until her knuckles turned white. For the first time, she admitted the truth she'd been avoiding. Malcolm Turner had them exactly where he wanted them. The courthouse was packed the morning the case of Turner v. Willow Creek HOA was called to order. Reporters crowded the steps outside, cameras flashing as curious locals gathered to witness the showdown. This wasn't just a lawsuit, it had become the talk of the entire county. Inside, Malcolm Turner sat tall and composed, dressed in a dark suit that gave him an air of quiet authority. Beside him, Lisa Grant flipped confidently through her binder of evidence. Across the aisle, Karen Whitfield and the HOA board members looked rattled, whispering furiously to their attorney. When the judge entered, the room fell silent. He adjusted his glasses, glanced at the case file, and raised an eyebrow. "It's not every day an HOA finds itself accused of building an entire subdivision on land it doesn't own. Let's proceed." Lisa stood first. "Your Honor, the evidence will show that Mr. Turner is the rightful owner of the land upon which the Willow Creek HOA constructed 120 homes. He holds the original deed, has paid every tax, and possesses a court ruling from 1978 protecting his estate. The HOA, through arrogance or negligence, trespassed on private property and profited from it. We are here to demand justice." Karen's attorney rose in defense. His voice was steady, but sweat glistened on his forehead. "Your Honor, the HOA acted in good faith, relying on county records that listed the land as available for development. Mr. Turner's claims, while historical, cannot invalidate the modern contract signed with homeowners." The judge leaned forward. "We'll see about that." Malcolm sat silently, but his eyes never left Karen Whitfield. She shifted uncomfortably under his steady gaze. For the first time, she realized this wasn't just a legal battle, it was a reckoning. And Malcolm wasn't here to settle quietly, he was here to make sure the truth was heard. Day 2 of the trial brought the moment Malcolm Turner and Lisa Grant had been waiting for. The courtroom was silent as Lisa stood before the judge with a stack of carefully organized documents. "Your Honor," she began, "this is the original deed to the Turner estate, dated 1932, signed and notarized by the county clerk. Here are decades of tax receipts, all paid in full with no gaps. And finally, This ruling from 1978, which explicitly recognizes the Turner family's rights and prohibits forced sale or seizure of the land. She handed the binder to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. He leafed through the pages slowly, his brow furrowing deeper with each turn. "These appear to be valid, authentic records," he said finally, glancing over at the HOA's attorneys. "How do you explain this?" Karen's lawyer stood fumbling with his notes. "Your Honor, while we acknowledge these documents exist, the HOA relied on county records that showed no current claim. If there was an error, it was at the county level, not with the association." Lisa stepped forward sharply. "Respectfully, that argument holds no weight. The county records were incomplete because of clerical oversight. But the Turner family's ownership was never extinguished. The HOA had every opportunity to investigate properly before bulldozing Mr. Turner's land. They chose not to. That is negligence." Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. A few homeowners who had come to watch nodded in agreement. Then Malcolm rose from his seat, his deep voice filling the room. "This land isn't just property, it's history. My grandfather bled to buy it, my father worked to keep it, and I've carried their legacy. The HOA didn't just trespass. They tried to erase my family." The silence that followed was heavy, broken only when the judge cleared his throat. "We will resume tomorrow with witness testimony, but I must say, this case is not looking favorable for the HOA. Karen Whitfield's face drained of color. The walls were closing in, and there was no way out. The final day of the trial arrived with tension so thick it felt like the entire county was holding its breath. The courtroom overflowed. Reporters scribbled notes, homeowners filled the benches, and the HOA board sat stiffly, their faces pale. The judge entered, carrying a stack of notes from the previous hearings. He adjusted his glasses, scanning the room before speaking. "After reviewing all evidence, testimony, and legal documents, this court finds that Mr. Malcolm Turner is the rightful owner of the land in question. The Willow Creek HOA acted unlawfully in developing homes on his property without consent." Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Karen Whitfield shut her eyes, as if bracing for a blow. The judge continued. "The HOA and its board members are hereby liable for damages, trespassing, and fraudulent use of private property. Furthermore, they are ordered to compensate Mr. Turner with full restitution for the land value as well as a portion of profits made from home sales. The families who purchased homes in good faith will retain ownership, free from liability. The burden rests solely on the HOA." The room erupted. Homeowners clapped. Reporters rushed out to break the story, and Karen collapsed into her chair, defeated. Malcolm Turner stood, his hands steady, his expression calm but resolute. Lisa placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. As he stepped out of the courthouse, microphones were thrust toward him. "Mr. Turner, how does it feel to win?" a reporter asked. Malcolm paused, his gaze firm. "This was never about money. This was about respect for my family, for the law, and for the truth. They thought they could take what wasn't theirs, but justice caught up with them." Behind him, the HOA board members faced angry crowds demanding their resignations. Their empire had collapsed overnight, while Malcolm walked away vindicated, his family legacy stronger than ever. The trap had closed, just as he planned.